If you spend on ads early without knowing your target customer,
It's an expensive way to fail.
everyone is, talking about automate marketing with AI. So your thoughts on this?
I think AI is
How do you build your first marketing strategy? Now, consider the fact that SMB, when they're starting, they don't have big marketing budgets or deep pockets, right?
don't do any ad spend until you figure out what works well organically. And that's my take for SMBs too.
So today I have someone from Fort Worth, Texas, USA. She is founder of great marketing company, Mel Bell. Mel, thank you so much for doing this today and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, Mel, let's go down the memory lane. And before great marketing, what was happening?
Before I started Grit Marketing, I was in a variety of marketing roles. I had a brief stint in sales when I first started my career. I was at Pepsi, and it was a great company, a great role, but it was short lived due to an interesting change of events or circumstances just on the personal front. So, a little background about me just before getting into the workforce, right, and building out a career for the last 15 years. I played Division I soccer at the University of Colorado, and there too had a great experience, but my last year or my last season ultimately ended in having a pretty major back surgery. So coming into the workforce, 3 months out of having a spinal fusion, I started a role that was designed to get me out into the field and to learn the business. And anyone who knows me knows I'm 100% or we're not doing it. And so going out into the field, moving product, physically lifting a lot of product, turns out that wasn't great for someone just coming out of a surgery. So I decided it was probably best that I figure out a different role, and that's what landed me in marketing. So I took a very, entry level position at a company that was a subsidiary of Boeing at the time. And what's interesting about my entry point into marketing is that I was actually working on a lot of internal facing communications for a very large IT implementation. So we were implementing SAP, if anyone's familiar with that, globally.
Yeah.
So, and I got, it was one of those things, I kind of joke that I was making pennies at the time, but what I learned by being surrounded by such a strong team culture and getting a lot of exposure to the executive team really allowed me to experiment and be experimental in a way that hadn't been done before at the company. So from there, I started to follow a lot of the roles that I took were typically in some sort of technology space, whether it was a B2B SaaS, nonprofit technology, or eventually ending my formal W-2 career with a professional services firm that focuses on integrating systems.
Wow. That's, quite a transition. Like, wow, amazing. So Mel, you were talking a couple of seconds before that you had, you've done both the roles like marketing and sales, right? So, uh, which is your favorite, honestly, marketing or sales?
Marketing. I love
Uh,
marketing, and I love partnering with sales teams. So I do sell, right? When I'm meet a new client, I get a referral and there is a sales process, but I don't ever really think of it as a sale. And I think when you really believe in what you're doing, and if you are, I don't like to withhold or gatekeep information. So I go into a lot of those calls thinking, just curious, what are your business goals? Before we get into marketing tactics, let's talk about what your goals are. And, somebody might come to me and say, I want to increase my following or my audience on LinkedIn by, I want 10,000 followers on my company page.
yeah.
My question is, What do you think that will do for your business? And then throughout the call, I've started to realize if I can leave a call and have handed that founder, CEO, a couple of very tactical suggestions for them to take with them, whether we work together or not, that builds trust quickly. So there have been a number of calls where I've shared, have you considered this? Maybe look into your CRM, pull a report about this, and try this tactic. Typically, they'll come back to me and say, hey, I tried that. That was really interesting exercise. And, that, like I said, that builds trust. It builds credibility. And again, even if you don't end up working with them, it is something that could lead to another introduction. So I would just offer up for anyone listening to be generous with your expertise, because that's where I think a lot of, not just myself, but a lot of the business owners I work with have really developed trust with their ideal customer quickly, which usually trust leads to some sort of, it does. Trust converts.
Okay. And it's funny though, like, I keep on looking at some of the videos about sales and marketing and all. And I'm sure most of our listeners also have heard this. Like, the first thing that you see in any of the videos or reels I just stumbled upon. So they show you a pen and say, "Sell me this pen."
Right.
How would you do that? Like, you don't, you're a founder, you're an entrepreneur, right? You don't know about marketing. And then how do you sell this pen?
Right. Well, I think you start by maybe using it. That's one thing. I know that that's not
Yeah.
always realistic when you, especially especially if you are the founder and you have a point of view. You started the business because you thought you could do it better, do it faster. You could, or no one was doing it at all. If you want to grow and scale beyond you having to be on the sales call, that's a lot of, I see a lot of founders get stuck in that. Their team is still dependent upon the founder being a part of every process. But
Yeah.
if you can document your point of view and get that into your go-to-market approach, then you can train on it and build assets that'll help empower your team to take your message to the market so that you can continue to, be the visionary and grow and scale your business.
So basically, find out what you're trying to solve and then tell people what you're trying to solve, right?
Yes. Yes.
As honestly as you can.
As honestly as you can. Yes.
Because sometimes what happens is, like, this is a general, view. Like, I have an amazing product, right? That has solved a problem that no one has thought about in the market. And now I go in front of the market and go in front of the people, and then I start showing my features and what have I done great. And they are scratching their heads. Oh, does this really solve my problem? Or
Mm,
this is just another product coming into the market?
right.
So, so most of the founders, do this mistake that basically they're not telling the story about why they're doing it.
Right. And I think now more than ever before, because we have platforms like LinkedIn or YouTube, there is an opportunity to build in public while you're, developing maybe a tool. I've worked with a couple of, I've worked with a lot of B2B SaaS, but a few early stage technology companies where if you spend 18 months building it and you're not, in some way getting feedback from the market, and that doesn't have to be that you give people access to your system or that you even demo it. It could be that you are articulating what you think are your top 3 use cases, and you do that by sharing a video, you write a couple LinkedIn posts about it, and you start reaching out to, or you think, okay, this use case solves something for lawyers. Well, if you're posting in a platform and aren't connected to any lawyers, you're probably not going to get any feedback. So there does have to
Yeah.
be a little bit of, you go to your ideal customer profile or who you think that is. I've actually had a couple of folks reach out to me recently on LinkedIn via just, they've dropped into my DMs and said, hey, I've noticed you're a fractional CMO type. Do you, any of your clients, or do you do this for any of your clients? I'm working on a product. It's in beta. Would love for you to test it and give me some feedback. So that's, a bit of, I would say, a really soft sales approach that I'm usually happy to, offer feedback. And so if you can take it to who you think you've built this for in a way that gives them some ownership in it, right? Or it like makes them feel as though their expertise is valued and you're going to, take that into your platform in some way, then I think that could be a really effective, not only for, ooh, we missed the boat on, we didn't even think about those features or that use case, but also potentially building a pretty strong pipeline for, work once you're ready to go into move from beta to like production. We're ready to go.
Awesome. And Mel, like, imagine there's a SMB owner, right? Small, starting, right? How do you build your first marketing strategy? Now, consider the fact that SMB, when they're starting, they don't have big marketing budgets or deep pockets, right?
Right.
They're trying to, they have an idea, they have some kind of service or product that they want to, make money from, and they have low budgets.
I think it goes back to what you mentioned about what problem are you solving and who has that problem. And so if you can at least identify who you think could be your first ideal customer, what does that look like? And then the next step is, where do they hang out? Where do they get their information from? And some of that is testing. I mean, there's a lot of trial and error, especially in the early days. But that's what's really interesting about, especially when you don't have a big budget. But we do have access to free platforms, like I said, like it could be Instagram or LinkedIn or YouTube, that allows you to start to articulate these problems in public and get real-time feedback on, whether or not that product or service that you've really thought about or are already developing or have is something that, you can bring to the market. And as you start to see feedback from people in the way of comments or DMs, that's where I think don't do any ad spend until you figure out what works well organically. And that's my take for SMBs too.
That is really important, because if you spend on ads early without knowing your target customer, then you might put your stuff in front of people who don't care about it.
Right. And it's an expensive way to fail if there are live events or groups that you can engage with who you think your ideal customer is. That's, a better way than just thinking about, well, I think this is my message. Let's throw a bunch of money at the ads. Because the other thing that happens is it's not just the ad. The ad is that like entry point, but what are you offering behind the ad? How are you nurturing that prospect or that sale after they interact with it? And we all know, we've heard, I'm sure you've seen the numbers. It takes 7 touches, 15 touches. The number changes a lot, but it takes this many times before someone buys. But then as we start to, maybe we can look at sales calls, or we can ask customers, what type of questions or problems did you have before, engaging with this product or company. And then we can build content around that to attract people organically, to attract people outside of that referral lead source.
For an early stage founder, right? Imagine, explain the psychology of sales. You go into the market saying that my first yes is going to come after 100 no's at least, right? So how do you stay motivated?
I think you talk to any founder, anyone in sales for sure, it takes a level of resilience and
Yeah.
understanding you're going to get comfortable with no. And it's really hard. I don't know that I have a great answer other than you all the no's are those things you can learn from and be comfortable asking why. I think that's something I actually, even when I led a sales team for a period of time before, right before I left to start Grit Marketing. And every salesperson that I know hates to put, not only they hate to change something to closed lost, but they really don't like to put why, right? The closed lost reason. Learning from the no's and really asking, can I ask you, why? And if they say timing or they say, I don't have the budget, like, don't be afraid to dig a little deeper. So sometimes you won't get that. They've already moved on. But the other thing that I will say is just to continue to learn from those interactions. And if you can, today I think it's very normal to record those calls. Obviously, ask permission, but like I came from an organization that for many, many years, we had transcripts from every stage of our sales cycle. And now it's easier than ever to analyze those in mass with AI and to really understand and critically ask the question to AI, what did I miss? What could I have uncovered better? Because you could also get a yes and realize that you didn't do as thorough of a job in the early discovery. And now you're out of scope or things are coming up that you should have accounted for in those early sales calls.
So Mel, you mentioned AI, right? So everyone is, talking about automate marketing with AI, right? So your thoughts on this?
Yes. So I think AI is a very powerful tool for marketing teams and for founders, right? It has given, especially the founder that's like, I don't know where to start. You have kind of a built in agent or a built in team member, if you will. One of the things I tell founders sometimes is like, take out your phone, put into a voice memo app, start talking to it and telling me like why you started the company, who you're for, what problem you're solving. Feed it real transcripts and real the way that you talk and your verbiage. And that's the first place to start. Opening ChatGPT or Claude and asking, build a marketing campaign around my product, which is called this and does this, is only going to get you probably a pretty vanilla framework
Yeah.
that you could have Googled and found your way through. So I know that after 15 years, I can quickly spot something that AI has either hallucinated or gathered from kind of a bunch of different recommendations that's not going to work in this industry. So having the experience is important. So for the early folks coming in or people asking, well, is this going to take my job? I would encourage to really just understand the tools and what's out there and to start learning them versus, well, I'm just going to ignore it. Early on, I started I guess it was 2023 when these tools started to really become more publicly available to those of us out here who had never really interacted with them. And at first I was very nervous. This is going to take my role. And then through encouragement from a colleague at the time who was adopting AI, he said, rather than be afraid of it, maybe go understand what it's capable of. And that's similar to conducting a competitive analysis on your, what is it capable of? And if I know its limitations and I know its strengths, then I can figure out how to use it or take it with me, whether it's at this role or something in the future. So I don't see a world where teams go away, but I do believe that a lot of the content itself, marketing, the way in which we're reaching audiences is going to continue to index with video. podcasts and events, live events. Those are the things that people know are real, at least for now, because even the video technology that you see with, companies using AI,
Yeah.
folks can spot those, and there's some companies doing it really well and some that are just experimenting. But people are so suspect right now of that's AI slop, right? I'm sure
Yeah.
you've seen that term in your
Yeah,
feed.
absolutely.
Yeah. So the more that, you can become familiar with how to use it, there's tons of great content on YouTube about how to do it. But yeah, I think as long as it's kind of always trying to understand, if you look at it as a competitor or could this be a competitive advantage, how can I leverage it for my business?
So instead of fighting it, embrace it.
Embrace it. That's, you said it so much more eloquently, and that's exactly it.
And Mel, like, the first thing that comes into marketing is market research, right?
Hmm.
So your top tool or AI tool, I would say, for market research.
I use Claude. I've used Claude since for 3 years. I know it's kind of all the rage right now, or at least what I've seen from my feed. But I've built a lot of projects around just analyzing customer insights, customer data, customer feedback. If you don't have customers, what is my favorite tool? Well, a lot of new capabilities are coming out. I actually built a skill in Claude to analyze domains, right? To analyze websites. So if your competitors or sorry, we're talking about customer research. So if
Yeah.
you're asking for, I want to go attract attorneys that practice this type of law, I still think that the tools like Claude are powerful for that. I actually don't have a specific tool outside of Claude just for customer research. I use SEMrush for those. It can be an expensive tool for, I think, early stage founders or business owners, but that is another one that allows you to do your keyword research and understand how people are searching on your problem. So if you do have access to, or you want to, even they offer a 7-day trial, do a SEMrush trial to just see, hey, is anyone searching for, and then insert, a couple of ways that you think about the problem that you solve. That's another good way to get started. But I think from what I've seen with Claude, there's capability there too to, kind of understand search patterns and how people are thinking about the problem. The other recommendation I would have, which is not as automated, a bit more of a manual exercise, but as you type into Claude or your search bar, even Google, the problem or service this that you solve, what surfaces? Are there a lot of Reddit threads on this topic? That's something that I've been seeing a lot happen. People are
Yeah.
taking their discussions into these communities and they're talking about it. And if you can go glean insight from Reddit threads, and Reddit is not just, for kind of the casual consumer. I've seen talk about B2B SaaS. There are people comparing features and benefits of Slack to Microsoft Teams in Reddit threads, so there is a lot of conversations that are shifting into communities like that you can glean a lot of insight on. You can take screenshots or, kind of scrape some insights out of those threads, create a project in one of your favorite AI tools or LLMs, and start to analyze those, how people talk about it, and against your product and your positioning.
So this is really important insight, Mel, from you. That basically you can feed a AI model, tell it about, like, you want to act like this, and then you want to do the market research and find it out on the internet.
Hmm.
Okay, it's going to do that, but that's one part of it. But then
Yeah.
you go and find out on these sites like Reddit that what are the people talking about,
And
right?
how are they talking about it?
And how are they talking about? Yeah, because that
Yeah.
is going to give you the real honest insight of, like, what's going on, what is the intent of a prospective buyer, what are they comparing, what are the type of questions they are asking, what are the kind of problems they are trying to discuss, right?
Right.
That combined with the knowledge of AI is going to be very powerful, because then you are able to get all of that information, feed it to the AI, and instead of just saying like, hey, I you act like this, and then you do the market research for me, you give them some context that I am basically trying to build something, and this
Yep.
solves this problem, and this is what the people are talking about it.
I've seen people take screenshots of conversations in Slack. They're not talking about it in this really crisp corporate way. Oftentimes it's hurried sentences and, less jargon, if you will, and more like you and I are talking at a cafe.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing is I tell people often when I go to their website, one of the biggest things, especially if you can get your customer to your website or, to your Facebook page, wherever you're kind of have your digital storefront, show me you know me. Show me you know my problem, and say it in a way that's relatable, in a way that I would talk about my product or my problem. So that's I know that's high level, but it's if you were to pull up your website and your customer was sitting next to you, would they agree that, yeah, that's how I talk about my problem, that's how I think about my problem? The other exercise too, you can do this manually or ask AI to do it, is pull up your competitors' websites and also ask yourself, can my ideal customer tell the difference between my product and service and what my competitors are offering? That's another, just a really kind of simple gut check to figure out if you're, maybe positioned in the way that you should be, given you have a unique perspective in the market, and is that coming through in your website?
Nice, nice. And I see this as a mantra, like, show me, you know me, right?
Yeah.
That's what every of our viewers should learn, that basically, if you're not able to express the problem of the potential customer, they're not going to buy from you, right? That is the
Mm-hmm.
number one thing that you should be focused on.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. So, Mel, let's move on to your entrepreneurship journey. So you had so much of experience in marketing and some of in sales also. Then you started Grit, right?
I did.
But what were the mistakes you committed, even though you had this much of experience as
Yeah.
an early start?
I thought that one mistake was I thought I had to be perfect to launch. I quietly updated my LinkedIn. And when I say quietly, I said, when it says, do you want to notify your network? I said, no, don't tell anyone. I'm just trying to make sure that my position is, has ended at my previous employer, and that, now
Yeah.
I'm going to go do this, but I want to do it under wraps, and I want to make my big perfect announcement when I'm ready. And I want to get a website perfect, and I want to get my pitch deck perfect. And that is not how it went. And I wasn't ready for my first sales call. I wasn't ready for that first email or outreach from someone who had seen my LinkedIn update. But you won't be ready, and there will always be something that isn't in a perfect state in your business. And I had
There will
a
be chaos all the time.
Yes, yes. And your podcast, Chaos to Clarity, the thing you need to try to get clarity on first is just your why. And that is the point of view. And I had a lot of people ask me, and I also thought that needed to be perfect, but that is probably the through line, is getting clarity on who you want to serve, who you want to reach, and how you want to help them or how you can help them. That's kind of number one, was the mistake of just thinking I needed to be perfect. I'm thinking through I've made plenty of mistakes.
Some of those that you laugh these days, like, oh man, I did this. Like, it wasn't me that time.
Gosh, there's probably so many, and I feel as though I've probably shared some of those things over the last. I've been doing this for 12 months now, so certainly still building and figuring it out. I think the other thing that comes to mind, I guess, making me laugh is like just the way that I thought that I needed to have it was all about the pitch deck. It's not about the pitch deck. It's
Yeah,
about your
true.
pitch, right? And
Yeah,
showing up and being, you know, genuine about the problem that you solve. Um, I another mistake I guess I would say I made. It's not probably on the funny side as you asked, but not being more proactive in reaching out to others. I was terrified of asking somebody with 10,000 followers on their LinkedIn to have a meeting with me because I wanted to learn from them, or I wanted to kind of ask questions about their journey. It was less about someone who I was trying to pitch or sell to, and more, wow, they're so far ahead of me, and I've learned so much from them on this platform. And they would, like, as we interacted and as I would comment on their posts, eventually it led to several people with a much larger audience, a much larger following, having done this for many years more than me. They'd say, "Hey, let's hop on a Zoom call." That's funny to
yeah,
me. Like, why was I so the worst thing that could happen is they say no. And that goes back to your, ask about sales. It's the worst thing that can happen is they say no or they ignore your connection request. And
and the even worse thing is that you never asked.
that's worse. Yeah. The inaction, there's a cost to inaction for sure.
Yeah. So go out there and then basically reach out, even if they say no or they don't respond. Doesn't matter. You keep reaching out. Some person somewhere in the world might, respond.
Yeah. And it's all what you put into. So
Yeah.
especially if we're going to talk about connecting and reaching out on a platform again like LinkedIn or pick your platform, it's not about blasting people with a bunch of connection requests. It's showing up in a way that's like, I'm here to learn, I'm here to connect, I'm here to grow. Your business will grow as a result of
Yeah.
your time spent not just on creating your own content and crafting your own narrative, but go find those people who are building a business like you, but also go connect with and find the people who you think you can help serve and spend time curating comments, engaging with their posts, connecting with them, and those interactions will lead to meaningful calls like this one, right? So I know I found you because of someone who I had connected with over, few months of just engaging with their posts, and he
Yeah.
eventually he shared about some podcasts he had been on. I clicked on your profile and you offered. I wouldn't have extended an ask to be on your podcast. Again, I could learn from myself what's the worst thing that can happen in action, right? But that's showing up in that way and just allowing yourself to, why not? I think that can go a long way.
And Mel, some of your customer experiences, anything that you remember that's really helpful for our you viewers?
Every mechanism or every aspect of the business, whether it's selling or delivering a product and service, all flows back into marketing, or it should. Because if our website says we offer amazing support, but tickets are going 3 weeks unanswered, that's not in alignment with how we're positioning ourselves in the market.
The funny thing is, like, all the business owners think marketing is expensive, right? It's very expensive. Like, you have to spend 5 times the budget of what you have built, right, into marketing, and then something will happen, right? So is marketing expensive or is advertising expensive?
Advertising is expensive. And
Why
especially
is why is not marketing expensive?
So marketing is your who I serve, the problem I solve, how I'm positioned. It's the classic 4 Ps: product, positioning, price, promotion. But advertising itself is you're buying places on media platforms like Google and Meta, the creative assets that go behind it, your direct response, like tracking links. We probably haven't talked about click-through rates and, when do I engage
Yeah.
email and what do I even do with all this data? That's where I think a lot of founders, especially early stage business owners, have been burned. And so for them, I go back to what has worked well for what have you tested organically, and how can you leverage that, or get that to be optimized across more channels. And in some cases that means, I think that's what's interesting about fractional work, is now there's more, I think, more freelancers, more fractional, more people that are spinning up services that are specific for a founder to try to test some of these competencies without bringing on a full-time marketing hire. You got to understand where your buyers hang out, because I have had so many folks come to me and say, I want to be on TikTok. I think we need to advertise. A business owner last week just told me 4 platforms he wants to advertise on. And I conducted interviews with his customers last summer. No one mentioned any of those platforms except for one, which was Google. And they found him and his services via organic search. So after I had learned that insight last July, from July to December, we invested our resources into developing more content that was SEO friendly. We did a lot more organic social. And so now we have a bunch of data to support which platform we should actually be on. It's expensive when you also try to be everything to everyone on every platform. Get 1 or 2 platforms, do those really, really well. Obviously, if you know your audience is there, do those really, really well before you start to divide your budget and your investment across a bunch of different platforms.
So just so that I understand this clearly, marketing is telling your story. Doesn't need money, right? All it needs is a right intention and the right mindset to tell the story. Why are you doing this? What are you trying to solve? And who this is for? Very clearly and very honestly, right? That's marketing. Now,
Fundamentally, yes.
fundamentally, yeah.
Mhm.
And then you go out there and you start telling your story and why you're doing this to couple of people. You start with your own network, your own friends, family, friends of friends, via like a lot of people. And then you gather the information that are they actually interested in listening to your story? If they are not, then you start to look at who are the people who will be interested in listening to this story, right?
Mhm.
And after that, when you find out, until then, there's no advertising happening. Once you find out these are the people who are ready to listen to my story and these are the people who have this problem, then to amplify it, right? Then you do advertising.
Yes, and I think one thing that I probably didn't hit on in all of that, so your story is important, right? Your point of view, that can build trust, but I think one of the things that founders overlook is how much expertise they have. And I go back to, instead of gatekeeping it, I talk to founders all the time that they don't know that what we just talked about for an hour should be like 6 webinars. I'm like, does your audience know this? Does the industry have this message? Is someone already sharing this message? No. Let's get it out there. And so the more you can build authority in your domain, the more you will see people, draw, like coming to you versus you having to push. There will be a pull mechanism to sharing what you know. So in my context as a marketer, the more that I can share, right now my best channel is LinkedIn. And the more that I can share how I conduct a competitive analysis, how I do stakeholder interviews. But if someone takes that information you shared and that expertise and they act on it and it works, you have just elevated your brand, whether it's Mel Bell or Mel at Grit. I've built trust with someone on the other end of, that feed that will and eventually will become, a customer or someone that leads me to an introduction with a new customer. I've seen it work for my business, but I also have worked with a lot of founders where we are utilizing channels like LinkedIn to develop the same kind of authority, which leads to trust, which leads to conversion.
That's a super insight. Thank you so much, Mel. Uh, let's talk about B2B SaaS, right? So, a quick word to B2B SaaS founders about marketing strategy.
Well, we know that generally with B2B, your buying pool is bigger. The buyer enters your funnel here, and then you serve them an email, and then you serve them a case study, and then you
Yeah.
serve them a testimonial. And it showed this very linear way that really it's not. Now there's these graphics out there that show that your buyer just took a screenshot of a post you did in LinkedIn. They sent it to their boss in Microsoft Teams. Their boss said, go, that's interesting, get a call. You Googled them. You get on a call. And so none of that has probably been very trackable, at least in our traditional marketing attribution tools. So being comfortable with the fact that it's probably likely going to be multiple buyers across channels that you may not always have visibility into, I think is one place to just kind of like mentally start. But being able to go back to some of those exercises we talked about, if you know that you are trying to reach people, especially in different roles, like this is the one that signs the contract. This is the one that uses the platform. Those messages are going to be slightly different. For the one who's signing the contract, you probably are talking more around cost efficiency or efficiency of your resources and your team. For the team member, it might still be an efficiency message, but it's no longer click between 3 tabs, get the information you need all in Slack or Teams. To the CTO, that's reduce your, spend on, 3 tools and, get it with one. I don't know, reduce your licensing costs. Obviously, we're not talking about an actual product here, but I think that, I get asked the question a lot, well, how do I speak to 2 different audiences when I have one website? So it's understanding who's actually finding you in the beginning and who are you actually talking to in the sales cycle. And generally it's, especially with SaaS, that can be more of your user that, you're talking to, who's someone who's using the platform versus the person that's signing the check.
Nice. And Mel, one question I have, like, you've got so much of experience, exposure from the industry. Now you've matured along the years. But what advice would Mel now would give to Mel 10 years back?
So I think that I would tell 10 years ago, Mel, before you do anything, talk to the customers. Before you do anything, learn the business. There was always this sense of urgency around, well, the boss says we need this, so we say yes. Sometimes saying no is a version of saying yes. Like you're saying no to, well, before we go deploy ads and update our website or invest in building a new website, have we validated all of these assumptions against
Yeah.
our, who we're selling to? And have we done the proper research on our customers to, feel confident that this investment, whether it's time or actual dollars, is worth it? So That's probably what I would tell myself 10 years ago.
Interview customers first, then decide what you have to do. Yeah.
Yeah, just have it, before you just jump into like, let's just create, social media profiles and let's create a website and let's go to events. Is that where we think these people are hanging out? There's some of that. Again, there's going to be trial
Yeah.
and error. You have to test. The other thing I would tell Mel 10 years ago is that the strategy that you built is meant to be, iterative, right? So I came to learn over my career that, it's okay to bake a plan 80%. So if we look at a lot of times I build out 12-month marketing plans, I typically build 80% of it to allow 20% room for margin because as we roll out different campaigns or tactics, there has to be a feedback loop. We have to measure, we can't optimize what we don't measure. But that would be the other thing is allow for iteration and flexibility, but not to the extent that it's the result of just saying yes to your many bosses that you're going to have in a company because if done well, I believe that marketing, doesn't operate or isn't effective if we operate in a vacuum. So if you, especially for a B2B SaaS firm, let's just say they have a marketer, they've hired a marketer, or they want to bring in a marketing function, it's really important that your marketer have a relationship with your product team, your product developers, your product engineers, just as much as they have a relationship with their sales team. Because the ones, if we say we're going to go develop this particular platform or feature, the marketer needs to know who's it for. Why, like what problem do we solve? Why do we care? And so does the sales team. I had roles before where I would get a Slack that said, "Hey Mel, we just rolled out a new product or a new app. Can you spin up a blog and a landing page for it?" No, I have so many questions.
Yeah.
Why did we build it? What need are we filling? Is it white space? Is it an enhancement? So having, I think as a company, as an organization, this is probably more for the founder, especially early stage, as you start to mature and bring on maybe more team members to manage aspects of, your product development through to delivery and servicing, mainly, your customer, ongoing customer satisfaction, there should be a through line. Every month, I hosted a go-to-market meeting with someone from every department. It was important to know what's being developed and why. And then the sales team or the customer success team can ask questions to the product team like, "Hey, we keep getting a lot of questions from customers or prospects about when this product feature could be available, or they're trying to solve for this. Do you guys have that accounted for on your roadmap?" And it invites really great dialogue across the company. There's more alignment, not only internally, but then there's alignment externally in how we talk about our product and service offering. So as early as you can, try to avoid the silos. I think it's easy when
Yeah.
you're small, because if you're a team of 3 or 5, you're probably always in some form of communication. But as you
Yeah.
grow and mature, it can be easy for each of those departments to become siloed.
Nice, nice. And Mel, like yours is a journey from early day chaos to clarity, finding clarity. Right? How do you define clarity today?
Clarity for me has become more personal. I think the I was comfortable in chaos that was driven by the workplace, driven by the work. But clarity now for me is having, you know, a, having a little bit more balance, right, in the way that I show up, having more control over my calendar, having the autonomy, I guess, to craft my own product and service offering, right? Clarity is also just being comfortable with that building in public and sharing the mistakes, right? You've asked a few times, like, what are those mistakes? I've shared a lot of that. I've become clear on who I am as a person and who I am as a professional by doing the exercise of why did that go wrong? Why did that fail? Why didn't I win that deal? And just documenting my journey along the way. That's what's created more clarity for me.
So clarity is being curious, right?
Mm, yes,
So when you are curious, you ask the question. When you don't have the answer, you find the answer. And when you find the answer, you get more clarity.
yes. And being comfortable with it, right? Because I think sometimes people aren't comfortable asking the question
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
being curious, I guess is your point. Like curiosity does sometimes create vulnerability and it can be uncomfortable. But if you can lean into the discomfort, that's where the growth comes from. That's what stretches you. And I like to say that's kind of what builds grit.
Superb. Superb. Uh, on that note, Mel, one last question. What do you want our viewers to take away from your journey?
I guess others could learn from my journey is that you don't have to know it all or be polished to perform, to be successful, to be fulfilled. It's better to have shipped the product or your message on day one versus trying to achieve perfection and delaying. Right, it goes back to that cost of inaction, and so if you can remove at least remove some of that fear of, but what if I fail? The more times you fail, the closer you probably are to the success. There is a saying out there, and I don't remember who. It's probably a sports analogy, but the more you can miss, so get those 99 no's. They're probably behind the 99th no is your 100th, like that
Yes.
100th time you try, you get a yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's superb. That's superb. So it's like perfection is a trap, right? You have to get out there, and you have to get out with whatever little shabby thing you have, and you have to, present it, and you have to learn from it. That is a
I'm
superb.
And I'm a recovering perfectionist. So I say that with great compassion and love, and I still get caught in the perfection trap. But I had a good mentor of mine tell me once, don't let perfection be the enemy of good. And
Yeah.
he frequently would say, V1 is good enough for day one. And as long as you commit to that iterative cycle of what can I learn from this interaction, because none of that happens. You don't get feedback if you don't put yourself or your product or your service out there. And what I also think, like the energy that you put out into the world comes back to you. So just showing up with a positive mindset even when you had a no. What did I learn from it? And knowing that your win is around the corner. The more losses that you have and that you can take on the chin, the better and sweeter that win is going to feel once you get it.
Nice. So it's like, you are selling it to humans, and they are humans, and they understand that humans make mistake. So
Mm-hmm.
don't be afraid of making mistakes. It happens, and you have to learn from them and move on.
Just remember you're talking to a human, and the sooner you can create the connection with them, whether that's a personal or professional, and show up curious. I love that you brought that up. Was just staying curious. That will lead to great results, just personally and professionally. If you can just show up curious and truly connect with the person on the other end of that message, or on the other end of your call, that's what I think ultimately we will be remembered for too.
That is superb. On that note, we come to the end of the episode. It's been an amazing conversation with you, Mel. Thank you so much for doing this for us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was an awesome conversation. I really enjoyed it.
So this was Mel Bell's story, and I'm sure you've learned a lot of things about marketing and how to do the marketing correctly. If you like this episode, please do subscribe to our channel and hit that bell icon. You were listening to Chaos to Clarity. I am Piyush Thacker, and I'll see you in the next one.